But I don't want to go among mad people, Alice remarked.
Oh, you can't help that, said the cat. We're all mad here. I'm mad, you're mad.
How do you know I'm mad? Said Alice.
You must be, said the cat. Or you wouldn't have activated Dimension Shifter during the main phase. Only mad people would open themselves up to triple tactics talent like that.
Today's episode is brought to you by my lovely patrons, as well as the wonderful people over at Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales and save 5% on your order by using coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. Hello everyone, GoldenNova here, and it's time to bring coverage of crossover breakers to a close with possibly the most exciting archetype in line. Ryuga is a pantheon of titanic monstrosities that are strong, but a bit convoluted in execution. Ryzeal is a reliable, though predictable, engine for a variety of rank 4 plays. But now, we're going to be working our literary muscles a bit while jumping down the rabbit hole to discover a world where up is down, left is right, and card games are actually Lewis Carroll novels in disguise. So, what's the deal with Maliss? Well, it's a series of level, or Link 3, dark attribute Cybers monsters, and if you haven't noticed from the imagery, it draws on a combination of cyberspace lingo and the beloved tale of Alice in Wonderland, with some chess terms thrown in there as part of the original story. And the combination isn't quite as far-fetched as you might think. Maliss is pretty clearly a play on the word malice, but includes Alice of the Wonderland fame. But Maliss can refer to all kinds of nasty malware, and Alice is a pretty common moniker when talking about encryption or hacking situations. In fact, if you watched the original Matrix movie, you're already familiar with the practice. Also, the original name for the theme, Maliss, has the upside down A in there, which is an actual symbol used in the process of notating mathematical logic, and is a pretty good visual indicator that the world Alice explores is a bit topsy-turvy. Also, Lewis Carroll, the story's author, was a pretty involved mathematician, and we all know how important math is when it comes to computers. As for the actual mechanics of the theme, they have a penchant for banishing. If any of them get sent into the great beyond past the recycling bin, you can bring them back for but a pittance of life points, and the deck's mechanics take advantage of that constantly. It even has a pretty robust suite of trap cards which would otherwise be a detriment to most decks, but can be utilized quicker in our theme if we banish a Maliss monster. Suffice it to say, this archetype is operating at peak modern card design, so expect to accomplish a lot. Let's begin by covering our main deck monsters, each of which have 3 effects to fit in with the overall 3 theming. One always provides some kind of bonus to Maliss Link monsters that point to them, the second is a utility effect that can vary quite a bit, and the last is a trigger effect if banished, letting you pay 300 life points to special summon it, but you can't special summon from the extra deck for the rest of the turn, except Link monsters. I know, what a terrible fate. Maliss P, Cheshire Cat, the P stands for pawn, has 1500 attack and 300 defense. And any monster destroyed by battle with a Maliss Link monster that points to this monster is banished. And during your main phase, you can banish a Maliss card from your hand, then you can draw 2 cards. The banish isn't a cost, which is both a good and a bad thing. Good because if you get hit by some kind of effect negation, you don't lose the card, but bad because sometimes you're really wanting to banish that card. But wow, I thought Pot of Greed was banned, but they made a monster that turns any on-theme card into one. That's ridiculous. Especially because, as someone who lives with 2 cats, I'm not sold on their ability to do anything with computers. I don't care that it's based on actual Black Cat programs, all they're gonna do is knock over those screens. Get it away from those! Maliss P Dormouse has 900 attack and 300 defense, and Maliss Link monsters that point to this card cannot be destroyed by card effects. During your main phase, you can banish a Maliss monster from your deck. Also, all Maliss monsters you control will gain 600 attack for the turn. It's no draw 2 effect, but now you aren't banishing from your hand. You get to banish directly from the deck, essentially letting you summon any other Maliss monster. The attack boost is almost incidental to the real bonus of essentially toolboxing your deck, and it gives protection to your links. This is easily the monster you want to see in your opening hand the most, as it's basically our best starter. Also, the art shows off that Dormouse has a tea kettle that shoots laser beams that bend the laser with teacup bits. Teacup bits, for crying out loud! This means we can only draw one singular conclusion from this art. Maliss P Dormouse is a new type. Maliss P White Rabbit has 1200 attack and 300 defense, and you take no battle damage from battles involving Maliss Link monsters that point to this card. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can set a Maliss trap card from your deck with a different name from the cards in your grave. While not as explosive as our previous cards, it's no less important. Our trap cards provide some powerful tools, and Rabbit represents all of them. You even have a monster to feed to them to use those trap cards immediately in the form of Rabbit itself. You know, I think at this point they've made up for being late for a very important date, because this card is definitely overclocked. Alright, that covers our main deck monsters. Now it's time for the links. Like our main deck monsters, our extra deck offerings can also summon themselves when banished, but this time you gotta pay 900 life points, but then you get some additional benefit. Also, these don't put you under the link summon lock, so that's kinda nice. Maliss Q Red Ransom, the Q is for Queen, is a Link 3 monster with 2300 attack, requiring 2 or more monsters, including a Maliss monster, as material. While this card points to a monster, you switch the original attack and defense of all effect monsters your opponent controls. If this card is special summoned, you can add a Maliss spell card from your deck to your hand, and when it revives itself via its own effect, you then get to banish a Cybers monster from your deck. Now, that's pretty good already for our own team, triggering the summon effect of all of our Malisses, but there's a few off-theme Cybers that will also enjoy this. For instance, Dotscaper is famous for its interaction with Dino decks, providing you with some free material. Balancer Lord is nifty as is, and if you banish it from the deck, you get to summon any level 4 or lower monster from your hand, letting you deploy more Malisses, or any hand traps in case you need the extra material. And that's all without mentioning the spell card you get off of this summon. We only have one spell card in the theme so far, but it's a very good one. In fact, it's so good that it might be worth a lot of money on release. It may be even worth the Queen's ransom. Maliss Q White Binder is a Link 3 monster with 2300 attack, requiring 2 or more monsters, including a Maliss monster, as material. If this card is special summoned, you can target up to 3 cards in any graveyards and banish them. During your main phase, you can set a Maliss trap card from your deck or graveyard, and when summoned back by its own effect, you draw a card. This has a great combination of graveyard hate and enabling, letting you expunge your Malisses from your grave to get them back into rotation while hating on your opponent's setup. It can even banish the monsters that you use to link summon this. So if they haven't already used their own effect to summon themselves, you can bring them back immediately. And grabbing trap cards every turn, not just from the deck but from the grave as well, keeps your field stocked up with actions, and even makes White Rabbit better if you remove names from the grave. And having a draw on a 900 life point cost is pretty swell. It'll accrue so much advantage, you're gonna need a whole binder to hold all of it. Maliss Q Hearts of Cryptor is a Link 3 monster with 2500 attack, requiring 3 monsters, including a Maliss monster, as material. As a quick effect, you can target one of your banished Maliss cards and shuffle it into the deck, and if you do, banish a card on the field, and its effect and activation cannot be negated if this card points to a monster. And when it special summons itself by its own effect, its attack becomes doubled, putting it at 5000 attack with no other bonuses. The issue is that when it comes back, its arrows aren't very conducive to being in the main monster zone, but it's still a pretty good trade-off. And you can still technically point it up into an EMZ, so it's not all lost. Being quick removal with such a powerful attack stat is not anything to be trifled with. Mess around, and you'll find yourself buried deep in the Cryptor. That covers all the monsters. Now it's time for the spells and traps. Maliss in Underground is a field spell card that, when activated, has you banishing a Maliss card from your hand, deck, or grave. While you have 3 or more banished Maliss trap cards with different names, Maliss Link monsters you control gain 3000 attack. And while you control any Maliss Link monsters, your opponent's monsters can only target those monsters for attacks. So on initial activation, you gain access to any of your Maliss main deck monsters, and will keep your little Malisses safe as long as your big links were around to protect them. The second effect is more of a bonus than anything else, but if you can meet the requirements, an extra 3k on your monsters is going to close out the game something fierce. It's basically a win condition all its own. And, as a little bit of extra trivia, this card is named after the first name the Alice in Wonderland story had, back when it was just a manuscript. So you can tell that when this hits the board, it's going to be a storied adventure. Next up, we have our normal trap cards, and they all share a really cool effect, where they can be activated the turn they are set by banishing a face-up Maliss monster that you control, which just so happens to trigger their effect to summon themselves. The names are also all big acronyms that are supposed to be a phrase from the book as well as the chapter that it's found in. So to make sure that you know what the card's talking about, I'm just gonna read out the acronym for these. Maliss Chapter 6, Grin Without a Cat, special summons a Maliss monster from your grave or banishment. Then if you control a Maliss Link monster, you can gain life points equal to the summoned monster's original attack. It's a bit unfortunate that we aren't pulling from the deck for this, but as long as you have some of your Maliss monsters in rotation, you can bring them back, while potentially grabbing yourself a hefty chunk of life points in the process. A welcome bonus considering all the life we'll have to pay for our effects. It may not leave our opponent with a big grin on their face, but it sure will on ours. Maliss Chapter 7, Mad Tea Party, is a trap card that adds a Maliss monster from your deck to your hand. Then, if you control a Maliss Link monster, you can banish a card on the field. This gives us even more ways to get to our monsters, and scales well into the late game as non-targeting removal. It's probably the best card to reset with White Binder every turn, because it already comes front-loaded with the bonus removal effect. But the strangest thing about this card is that it brings in an up until now unrelated card that's been out for a while, Mad Hacker. Yeah, they seeded this guy in 2 years ago, back in the Battle of Chaos core set. Talk about your deep cuts. What kinds of other free agent cards are just sitting around that could end up being introduced in other themes later on? It's enough to drive a lorehound like me mad. Maliss Chapter 11, 3 Blasts, is a trap card that special summons a Maliss monster from your deck, or if your opponent controls 3 or more cards, you can special summon a Maliss Link monster from your extra deck instead, though the summoned monster can't attack or activate its effects this turn. It's unfortunate that we lose out on the effect that turn, but really that's just one more hoop to jump through. If we can banish the summoned monster, we can bring it right back, and it'll no longer have those restrictions. Though this won't work quite as well on Link monsters since they weren't properly summoned. This makes it a great card to grab off of White Rabbit, as you can immediately use it to summon another Maliss, link the 2 of those into Splash Mage, bring back one of your Cybers, and there you go, that's a Red Ransom or White Binder, whichever one you want. It's a blast to play. 3 blasts even. So that's all the Maliss info I have, but what do we do with them? Folks, it's big combo time. We want our enablers to come into play ASAP, get our links into rotation, beef them up to a gajillion attack points, and then it's off with their heads. So we need cards that banish our own as soon as possible, synergize with our trapped cards, and bring out the best of our Cyber squad. So what can we play to help them out? First up, we have to talk about Mad Hacker. It's also a Dark Cyberse monster and is a very odd hand trap. It summons from hand whenever a monster is special summoned to your opponent's field, and during the end phase, it can banish itself to steal our opponent's smallest attack monster, but just so happens to put you under the same link lock as our main deck Maliss monsters do while that stolen monster is on your field. It doesn't have a lot of synergy with our theme, but it's got enough similarities that it's an interesting thing to bring up. Maybe have some fun with it when going second to steal some free link material from your opponent for your combos.
Next up, Cynet Mining, a card that's basically extra copies of our Maliss monsters, as well as extra copies of any level 4 or lower off-theme Cybers we want to splash in.
Because of the link lock, most math mechs won't work because they love to Xyz and Synchro Summon, but Sigma is just about always going to be a good extender in Cyberse decks. And then we have cards like Backup Secretary and Link Infra Flyer that can drop out of the hand once you get a Cyberse or Link monster on the field, respectively. Allure of Darkness is also a really good spell to help dig through your deck, because like with Thunder Dragon, you've got some dark monsters that are actually enabled by that banish. Gold Sarcophagus isn't half bad either. It's basically a free Maliss summon from the deck. And speaking of banishing, it's time for the most annoying cards in the game. We're talking Dimensional Fissure, we're talking Macrocosmos, and of course we're activating Dimension Shifter during the draw phase. All these cards and more will make your locals hate you the second they resolve. Chaos monsters banish from the graveyard to fuel their summons, but they also require light monsters to go along with the darks. But you know what only needs one of those attributes? That's right, Bestials! You still get the great benefit of weeding out all the lights and darks from your opponent's grave while still using them to enable your own plays.
What I like about our Link monsters is that nothing is stopping us from Link climbing with them even further into the realms of Link 4 and beyond. Access Code Talker is able to still get that big 5300 attack point threshold, and banishing your Links to pop cards is just gonna bring them back. I've seen a lot of builds focusing on making Neo Tempest Terahertz, but the one that I find the most funny is Topologic Zero Boros. The big board wipe doesn't mean much to you if it just means reactivating the effects of all your Maliss monsters. As for a silly tech pick, I'm in on Degrade Buster. While we have a hard time using Chaos monsters, one that asks you to banish 2 Cybers monsters is pretty swell, landing you an impressively sized monster, and its effect is pretty cool too. It's not removal per se, but temporarily blinking a monster bigger than it means you don't have to deal with it for that turn. And if worse comes to worse, it's another high-leveled monster to make a more effective Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos. And that's all I have to say about Maliss. The deck is primed to take a swipe at the top tables, being a mix of high-powered monsters, search effects, and a willingness to apply as many banishing floodgates as possible. And with our field spell and boss monster Cryptor handling the attack points needed to close out the game, all we need is to execute this executable well enough to bring about a fortuitous outcome. And if you think this theme is good now, just wait until the legacy support drops. You think it would be too on the nose to introduce the card guards? But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Is Maliss set to end the logic of the current metagame, or is it nothing more than a silly flight of fancy? And which one's your favorite? The design work here is top notch across the board, but White Binder has such a cool mech setup, I really love it. Let me know your favorite down below, and if you haven't already, please be sure to like the video if you liked it, subscribe so you don't miss any more episodes, and share this video with somebody you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode is brought to you by Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales and get 5% off your order by using the coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. It was also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commanders, Upstairs Media, and the Wizard Moose, Nebula Navigator's 3rd Dynasty, 50 Gigabits, Ada Basilisk, Adams Ajdel, Oexo Toahime, Anansi Dragon, Ancient Wizard, Andrew Newman, Kane Senpai, Chibi Gohan, Christopher Fuss, Clockswork, Comrade Copperbottom, Eric, Frankie, Garland Chaos, Green Knight, Gloomba 331, Great Big Pillock, Hairbear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Howling Zangetsu, Iron Zero, Iskander 711, Carp, Leo 458, Mana Charge, Marion James E. Picata, Megacombi, Millennia Asta, Mern, Muse Clark, Nathan Vig, Natiel Lee Alexander, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Pat Poos, Rebel King Lucifer, Red Eyes Jackalow, RJ the Jank Monarch, Serenity Towns, The Critic of Innocence and Thievery Coast, Cosmic Crusaders Andrew J. Whitaker, Ariel Kersey, Baden von Titty Sprinkles, Beelzephyr, Beluga Masta, Blitzwolf, Chaz Ghost, Dr. Reaper R.I.P., Eki Bullock, Eva Padilla, Hike Boyagian, Herbal D, Ignis Heat the True Draco Slayer, Inblink, Kale the Dragon, Kevon Public, Lobamaru 02, Manga Pages, Matt Simmons, McSpoofy, Michael Shimobukuro, Nitromo, Nyx, Obsidian, Shizuka Nijimura, Sophie, apparently, Stephen Williamson, Taylor Seymour, The Legendary Raven, The Phantom Knights of Shitted Pants, The Pokemon 52, Tiger X2476, Weasel King of Weaseltown, and Zaldreka, as well as the wonderful Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, get my videos early, be a part of these credits and other awesome perks, it would mean the world to me if you'd check out the link to my Patreon in the description or consider joining as a YouTube member. And if you'd like to see another deck that thrives on the banishment, check out this video where I cover Thunder Dragons. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Malice P. Cheshire Cat.
I have never been more disappointed in you, Nova.